It was one of those calm, ordinary afternoons that blend into every other day. The kind of day where the hum of the neighborhood feels comforting, predictable. The sun was out, the air smelled faintly of rain from the night before, and somewhere down the street someone was mowing their lawn. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, until I heard it. A voice, sharp and trembling, cutting through the quiet like a siren. "Get out now!" my neighbor shouted those words with a fear so raw it made my heart stop. At first I froze. You know how sometimes your brain can't catch up with what's happening? For a split second, I wondered if she was joking, if maybe she'd seen something small, a stray animal, a spark, something that didn't concern me. But there was something in her voice, something that told me this wasn't one of those moments you question. It was the kind you obey without thinking. I remember turning my head toward her house, and in that brief moment, everything felt suspended. The world, the air, even my thoughts, all paused. Then instinct took over. I didn't ask questions. I didn't grab anything valuable. I just moved. I ran toward the door, my heartbeat echoing in my ears louder than her words. The ground felt uneven beneath my feet, the air thick with something I couldn't name yet. My hands were trembling, fumbling with the lock, trying to push the door open faster, and still her voice rang in my head. Get out now. It wasn't just a warning anymore, it had become a command, one that carried every ounce of her urgency. When I finally stumbled out, I caught her eyes across the yard, wide, terrified but focused. That look, I'll never forget it. It was the look of someone who wasn't just trying to save themselves but everyone around them, the kind of courage that rises only when danger feels too close to ignore. I didn't know what was happening yet, but I could feel something was wrong, something big. The ground gave a faint vibration, and the air smelled. Strange, metallic, maybe burning. Every sound, every movement suddenly felt magnified. I turned back for just a second, a habit maybe, and that's when it hit me how quickly life can tilt from calm to chaos. A few minutes earlier, I was folding laundry, thinking about what to cook for dinner, and now I was standing outside, heart pounding, realizing how close I might have been to losing everything. It's strange how we take the quiet for granted, how we assume the world will stay still because it always has. But all it takes is one voice, one shout, one warning to remind us that safety isn't something guaranteed. It's something fragile. Later, I would think about how that moment began, about how her courage to shout, to act without hesitation, made all the difference. We often underestimate how powerful a single voice can be, how just one act of urgency, one moment of bravery can ripple through and save more lives than we'll ever know. I didn't thank her properly then, there wasn't time. But deep down I knew something sacred had happened, a moment when instinct met compassion, when fear met courage. When I tell this story now, I don't dwell on the fear as much as I used to. I think about the voice, that human voice that carried through the air, sharp and urgent, yet filled with care. Get out now. Those 3 words were more than a warning. They were a bridge between 2 hearts, hers and mine, connecting us in that single instant of survival. And as I stood there trying to catch my breath, not yet knowing what darkness was about to fall, I realized that sometimes the universe sends us angels disguised as neighbors. And just before everything went dark, I understood that shout wasn't just meant to save my life. It was meant to wake me up to what life truly means. When everything went dark, it wasn't just the lights that disappeared. It was as if the world itself had taken one long, trembling breath and then stopped. The sound of that last warning still echoed in my ears, but suddenly even that seemed swallowed by the silence. One moment there was sunlight, motion, life, and the next, a heavy stillness. I remember blinking hard, trying to adjust, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Darkness has a strange way of playing tricks on the mind. It feels like time slows down, like every heartbeat grows louder, like your own breath becomes the only thing keeping the world from collapsing entirely. At first, I thought maybe it was a power outage, a simple flicker, something temporary. But then the smell hit me, acrid, burning, the kind of smell that clings to your throat and tells you this isn't ordinary. I could feel heat against my face, faint at first, then rising, spreading, alive almost. The darkness wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating, like a curtain closing too fast. I reached out, trying to find something solid, something to anchor me, but all I found was emptiness. The air was thick, the quiet, absolute. And that's when the fear started to crawl in. Not the loud kind that makes you scream, but the quiet kind that paralyzes you from the inside. I could hear faint sounds, muffled shouts, the distant crack of something breaking, maybe a window or a beam. I wasn't sure. Every noise felt distorted, as if the world had been thrown underwater. My mind kept replaying her voice, "In, out now." Those words became the only thread connecting me to reality. I repeated them in my head over and over like a mantra, as if holding on to them could somehow lead me toward safety. In that darkness, I realized how fragile our sense of control really is. We walk around believing we know what the next moment will bring, that we can plan our lives neatly. But in truth, all it takes is one heartbeat for everything familiar to dissolve into uncertainty. The fear wasn't just about what might happen next, it was about what I couldn't see. There's something profoundly humbling about standing in total darkness, unable to tell what lies an inch away from you. Your eyes strain for light, your mind invents shapes, your heart races. And somewhere deep down, you understand how small you really are. I remember reaching out again, half expecting to touch something, a wall, a door frame, anything, and feeling nothing but empty air. It was like standing inside a void. But here's the thing about darkness. It's not just emptiness, it's also a mirror. It forces you to listen to your own heartbeat, to your own courage, to your own instincts. It strips away distraction and leaves only what's real. In that moment, as terrifying as it was, I found myself thinking not of fear, but of gratitude. For the voice that warned me, for the chance to still be standing, for the fragile thread of life that connected me to something beyond that darkness. The longer I stood there, the more I began to realize that even in total blackness, there's always a flicker, not of light, but of will. The will to move, to survive, to push through. My eyes adjusted slightly, just enough to make out faint outlines, shadows of shapes maybe, or maybe just my imagination trying to find hope in a place where there was none. But that's what we do, isn't it? We search for meaning in the void, for light in the dark. Because deep down we believe it's there, even when we can't see it. And as that heavy silence stretched on, I took one slow breath and whispered softly to myself, not out of fear, but as a promise, and still here. When the light finally began to creep back in, it wasn't gentle. It came with smoke, noise, and confusion, a blur of sounds and movement that felt unreal, like waking from a nightmare only to realize you were still inside it. My hands were shaking, my knees weak, and every breath came with the taste of dust and ash. People were shouting, but their words didn't make sense yet. It was chaos, the kind of chaos that doesn't announce itself, it just swallows you whole. For a moment, I didn't even know where I was. Everything around me was twisted, unfamiliar. The house that had always felt so steady, so safe, now looked like a stranger's home. There's something unsettling about seeing the world you know turned upside down in a heartbeat, the furniture scattered, the pictures from the walls lying face down, the air filled with the low, steady hum of things breaking down. I remember stepping forward, one slow, hesitant step at a time, my body heavy, my heart still racing. It's strange how instinct works. Even when your mind hasn't caught up, your body moves toward life. You look for people, for sound, for signs of someone else breathing. That's exactly what I did. I called out, not even sure what I was saying, just hoping someone would answer. Then I saw them, neighbors, some standing in disbelief, others moving fast, helping, carrying, comforting. It was like time had fractured. Part of the world stood frozen, while another part rushed to mend what was left. Someone handed me a blanket, someone else guided me to sit down. Their voices sounded far away, muffled, like they were coming through water. I remember their faces, though. The worry, the kindness, the shared understanding that we'd all just seen something we'd never forget. In moments like that, the mind does something strange. It tries to hold on to what's normal. You start thinking about simple things, the cup of tea you didn't finish, the book still open on the table, the smell of dinner that never got made. It's your way of reminding yourself that there was a before. But as I looked around, I understood that before was gone. There was only after, now, and on after looked nothing like I'd imagined. Fear still lingered, but it began to soften, replaced by a kind of quiet disbelief. How could everything change so fast? How could life be so fragile, and yet we were still here, breathing, standing, helping one another? I could hear someone crying softly nearby, and another person whispering, "It's okay, we're safe now." Safe. That word had never felt so heavy. Because in that moment, safety wasn't about walls or locks or lights. It was about people, about the hands that reached out, the voices that steadied you when your own began to shake. I sat there for a long time trying to process the sound of it all, sirens in the distance, footsteps, crunching debris, murmurs of reassurance. Every noise was a reminder of survival, every breath a small victory. I remember catching my reflection in a broken window, my face streaked with soot, my eyes wide and distant. But underneath the exhaustion, there was something else, something fierce and alive. Maybe it was gratitude. Maybe it was the realization that life, even when it falls apart, has a way of holding you up if you let it. The world eventually started to move again, slowly, uncertainly, like a record spinning back after a long pause. People began talking, checking on one another, gathering in small clusters. There was still fear, yes, but also relief. And as I stood there, surrounded by the remnants of what used to be normal, I understood something I never had before. That survival isn't just about escaping the darkness. It's about finding your way through the aftermath, about seeing the faces still standing beside you and realizing you're not alone. In the days that followed, I kept thinking about that voice. The voice that broke through the calm and pulled me out of danger. It echoed in my mind long after the smoke cleared, after the noise faded, after the world began to find its rhythm again. I couldn't stop replaying that moment, her shouting, my hesitation, the instinct to listen. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that what saved me wasn't luck or timing. It was connection, that deep, unspoken bond that ties people together even when they don't think about it. We live side by side, exchanging polite greetings, waving from our driveways, sharing small talk that feels routine. But it's in moments of crisis that we see what those tiny threads of familiarity really mean. That shout wasn't just a sound carried through the air, it was an act of love, raw, urgent, and selfless. It came from a place of care that runs deeper than words, because when fear hits, most people freeze. But she didn't, she acted. And that simple act reminded me that even in a world that often feels divided, kindness still finds a way to break through. It's easy to go about our days thinking everyone's just busy with their own lives, their own worries. But the truth is, there's something in us, all of us, that wakes up when we see another human being in danger. That's the kind of humanity we forget we have until it's tested. I remember looking around the neighborhood the next morning. The air still smelled faintly of smoke, the ground littered with debris, but people were out, checking on one another, offering food, sharing blankets, helping to clean up what was left. There were no questions about who should help first, no hesitation about whether someone deserved it. It was instinctual. Compassion had taken over. That's when it hit me that community isn't built in the calm moments. It's built in the chaos, in the aftermath, when people choose to stand together instead of apart. That single warning had set something larger in motion. It reminded me that courage doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it's as simple as shouting when others would stay silent. It's reaching out a hand, even when you're scared yourself. It's doing the small thing that changes the big outcome. And isn't that what life is about? These small moments of courage that ripple outward, touching people we may never even know. Later, I found out that she had seen the first signs, the flicker, the spark, the smoke curling from where it shouldn't be, and she didn't think twice. She didn't pause to wonder if it was her place to interfere. She simply acted. That decision, that instinct, created a chain reaction of survival. And that's what I carry with me most of all, the realization that one person's awareness, one person's voice, can make the difference between life and loss. When I think about her now, I don't just think about the moment she shouted. I think about the humanity behind it, the way we as people are built to look after one another, even when the world tries to convince us otherwise. In the darkest of times, we don't need grand speeches or perfect plans. We just need one person willing to care enough to act. And that's the beauty of it. When everything around you feels uncertain, when fear takes hold, it's often a single voice, a single gesture of compassion that reminds you you're still part of something greater. As the days turned into weeks, I started to notice how the memories of that night kept changing inside me. At first, all I could remember was the fear, the sound of the shout, the sudden darkness, the chaos that followed. But slowly, the edges of that memory began to soften. I began to see not just what had happened, but what it had taught me. You see, moments like that don't just come and go. They leave marks, quiet ones that shape how you see everything afterward. For a long time, I kept asking myself, why me? Why was I spared? Why did I hear the warning when so many others didn't? But eventually, I realized that maybe the question wasn't why me, but what now? What was I supposed to take from that moment? What was it meant to show? Life, about people, about the fragile, unpredictable way everything can change in a blink. The biggest thing I learned was that we spend too much time believing tomorrow is guaranteed. We make plans, we argue about things that don't matter, we hold on to pride, we take our days for granted. But when you've stood in that kind of darkness, when you've felt the weight of not knowing if the next breath will come, it changes something in you. You start to see the gift in the ordinary. You notice the sunlight on the curtains, the laughter from across the street, the small kindnesses you used to overlook. You stop rushing past the beauty that hides inside the quiet. And I learned something else, that listening can save your life. Not just hearing, but listening, bent, really listening when someone reaches out, when someone warns you, when life itself whispers that something needs to change. I almost ignored that shout. For one fleeting second, I hesitated, and that second could have been the difference between being here and not. It made me wonder how many other times in life I've ignored signs, ignored people trying to reach me, ignored that small voice inside saying, pay attention. Now I listen differently, to people, to moments, to silence. Because sometimes what saves you doesn't come as a grand revelation. It comes as a simple truth wrapped in urgency. That night also taught me that courage isn't loud. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is quiet. It's the choice to face fear, to move forward even when everything inside you wants to stop. I used to think bravery was about being fearless, but I learned it's really about being terrified and still taking the next step anyway. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after surviving something that could have ended you. It doesn't come right away, but when it does, it's deep. It's a peace that reminds you that you don't have to control everything, that life will never be predictable, but it will always offer you chances to start again, to be grateful, to love harder. Now, whenever I pass by that house, I still feel the echo of that night, not with fear anymore, but with gratitude. Gratitude for the warning, for the people who came running, for the lesson that shook me awake. Because the truth is, none of us ever know how many moments we get. But we do know what we can do with the ones we have. Listen more, love more, act when it matters, and never take a single ordinary day for granted. And that's the real lesson that stayed with me. That life, in all its uncertainty, is still the most beautiful thing we'll ever be given.